My research paper was on serial killing. So, as an introduction, serial killing peaked in the 80s, and I wanted to answer three main questions in my research paper, which was how do I find a serial killer? How does someone become a serial killer? And what are some similarities between serial killers? Some basic information before getting into the rest of the slideshow. So, the definition of serial killing is three or more killings spaced out with similar crime scenes. And this is different from mass murder, which is four or more killings in a short time and at the same place. An example to differentiate between the two killings is a serial killing could be in the same neighborhood, three different houses within like a month, but mass murder could be at a concert and it's five people in the same day. And another interesting fact, America holds 4% of the world's population, but we hold 67% of the serial killing population. And again, from the slideshow before, serial killing was at its peak in the 1960s through the 1990s. Some of the big murderers during that time was John Gacy, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and the Zodiac Killer. So the signs of a serial killer are not all on looks. It is mainly on the actions and the thought process that the person goes through. And this is again not 100% accurate. This is just like a general characterization of all serial killing people that we've like analyzed. So the biggest thing that we find is like a common factor between all of them is that they need to have the feel of dominance. At a young age, this is usually shown through animals. They will tend to kill animals or dissect animals just for fun. The person will also show interest in the use of fire, but not in the way that people sit around the campfire and just like the sound of it. It is more of destruction, like shown in this picture before, right here. It looks like that girl lit the house on fire just to be like, I want to watch this house burn down, and I want it to the fire to destroy this house. Not, ooh, fire's pretty. More signs of a serial killer are is antisocial personality disorder. So that has to be diagnosed by a doctor. You can't self-diagnose, but it is no feeling of remorse or guilt. And usually the person doesn't conform to social norms, are really good at lying and can be extremely aggressive and irresponsible. Again, this is shown at earlier ages. And another thing shown at early ages is voyeurism, and voyeurism is again dominance, but in a vulnerable way. And most of the time, you'll see these in cases where they take vulnerability in a sexual way. So they'll find it in stalking someone without the person knowing, or in a mental way. So they'll like write people notes to get in their heads. Dahmer shows voyeurism, and he used necrophilia, which is sexual intercourse with a dead body. And his main goal was to not kill people, but he wanted to make dead slash vegetated males just to have sex with them. Another step in trying to figure out if a killing was a serial killing or not is to look at a crime scene. So when someone looks at a crime scene, they're profiling to figure out like what kind of murder this was. So what they look for is like they'll try and find out what the murderer looks like, their age, and outstanding characteristics while profiling. There's two stages in profiling. There's general profiling and specific profiling. So, like as the name sounds, general profiling is comparing general crime scenes to the new one, and they usually look to find the three different types of serial killers, which will be in the next slide. Then the second step is specific profiling, and that's when they get into the details. And that link right there is to a video to show from like the first episode of Criminal Minds where they show specific profiling very well. PSA, I know the video's not great quality. You can't screen record Netflix, so I had to record my TV and then upload it, so sorry that the quality's not that great.
Anyone recognize these faces?
Victims of the footpath killer.
That's what Virginia newspapers are calling him. We refer to him as the unknown subject or unsub. I told Virginia PD they're looking for a white male in his 20s who owns an American-made truck, disrepair, works a menial job. I told them when you find him, don't be surprised to hear him speak with a severe stutter.
Not so skeptical, but come on, stutter?
Where the murders occur. I see. If I'm a killer who has to use an immediate application of overpowering force, even out in the middle of nowhere, I lack confidence. I can't charm them into my car like Ted Bundy did. I can't because I am ashamed of something. I'll take this.
Have a nice day.
In general profiling, they look for three types of serial killers, which is medical, organized, and disorganized. The medical serial killer is very rare and they're very intelligent. So the example I have is Harold Shipman. He killed about 260 people that he admitted to. So he was a doctor and he would inject a lethal dose of painkillers into elderly patients so that when they died, it wasn't as weird or unexpected. The second kind is organized. They're the hardest ones to find and capture because they plan in advance and they take great pride in what they do. They think of killing as a job. And so my example is the Green River Killer. He killed about 71 people over the span of around 30 years. And he would watch the news just to see how stumped the police were. Then you have the disorganized killer. They're motivated by like imagination or something just random. And they usually have a very low IQ and antisocial. So my example is David Berkowitz. He killed 6 people in New York. He's also known as the Sunny Killer. And he was motivated by a dog telling him to kill people because why not? So now I'm going to be comparing and contrasting two serial killers. I'm calling them the Midwest Murderers. They have very similar crime scenes, and I'm going to be explaining that. So Jeffrey Dahmer, while in his younger ages in elementary school, he would fake seizures for attention, which was a big sign for being a serial killer is wanting attention. He would also dissect animals or like roadkill he'd find on the streets. His parents didn't find that suspicious at all. He also had like a fascination with bones, but his mom and dad were scientists, so they're like, oh, maybe he's taking after us. So he didn't get a fascination of killing until 1978 when he found out he was homosexual. He would watch this man Mark run by every day, and one day he's like, I'm gonna kill him. And he tried to, didn't work out, and then found him at a bar later because he was 18. So what he did was he lured him in. They had a few drinks. Jeffrey Dahmer would make him unconscious, usually by hitting them with a bat or a pan or something. And then he would masturbate or have intercourse with the body and then dissolved them in chemicals, which is what that blue bucket is. And then pictured above in that top corner is all the victims. And so he started getting confident in his work after about 13 victims. And then he would take pictures throughout the process, and which was found at the crime scene. And another thing found at crime scene were severed parts from different men that he had killed, preserved in acetone. In 1989, his killing spree was interrupted when he had sexual assault charges, which he got let off on parole and then instantly went back to killing. And that was in 1991, and he had killed 17 victims by the end of his killing spree. So John Wayne Gacy grew up with an alcoholic and abusive father, which contributed to a lot of his issues. His sister said that while his father would beat all of the children during John's beatings, he didn't cry. And as a child, he was isolated because he had a heart disease, which meant he couldn't like do the activities that the rest of the kids would, and they'd make fun of him. He also found out during this time he was homosexual, just like Jeffrey Dahmer was. And his killing spree started in 1972. So what he would do, he would lure in teen boys with the promise of a construction job, but that wasn't the case. So once he got them into the home, he would sexually assault them, torture them, and either strangle them with his hands or a rope. Then he would throw the bodies into a trench that was under his house. His spree ended in 1978, and the cops had found the trenches of dead bodies under the house, and it ended up being around 30 victims. While both Dahmer and Gacy both have very similar motives, they also have very different motives. So, some similarities, they hid their sexuality when they were younger, and that's what ended up driving them to find like their victims. Gacy went after teenage boys when he was in his 30s, and Dahmer went after guys his age. And they both had kept the victims. Dahmer kept them in acetone, or just parts of them in acetone, and tried to get rid of the rest of them, and kept pictures of the ones that he really, really liked. Whereas Gacy just didn't know how to get rid of them, so he just like chucked them into a trench under his house. And they both enticed young men into their homes, and that's how they ended up killing them. They were all killed in their homes. And they both had sexual assaults in the middle of their killings, but got off on parole and continued to kill the boys that they had pressed sexual assault charges.